Hello, welcome to the Unifying Force. I'm Kat, Dave, Geo.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever the case may be.
Good day.
Indeed.
Thank you.
So, welcome to episode 64.
Oh, okay.
64 this time. And we are going to be talking about, was there any news in Star Wars this week? What? No. I tell you, when things happen, they get crazy. Everything in every property and every crazy trailer came out this week. We get celebration ticket news, we get an Acolyte trailer, we get an Alien trailer, we get a Beetlejuice trailer, we get the new Ghostbusters movie comes out. It's blown open craziness.
Yeah, that Alien trailer looked really, really good. Like Fede Alvarez knows where it's at. Keep it simple, nice and scary. Thousands of figures, wonderful.
I hope that goes back into the fold. I mean, it went out a little bit for a bit and lost some of the magic that made Alien.
Yeah, I haven't been excited for an Alien movie in a not really in my lifetime, actually. And that goes back to Alien 3. It's like, this looked really good.
It looks like it's harkening back to actual Alien, the 70s behemoth landmark Ridley Scott film. It has that feeling. And you don't really... it hasn't been sensed for a while in the Alien universe.
Speaking of
which, I mean, yeah,
4K.
Oh,
this week. Excellent.
A drop this week.
Like last week or something, but they didn't make enough, so they've been selling out everywhere, and they're having to order more. But it's like, I've been waiting for them to put that out on 4K forever.
Well, I think that's the studios or their manufacturers' lack of faith in physical media in general.
It's like Disney bought Fox and they didn't make any new transfers. They just bought it and it's been sitting there, and they just signed a deal with Sony, and Sony by the end of the year is going to be handling all of Disney's physical media, which is surprising. They're outsourcing it to another company.
Yeah, that's where I don't know. I think Disney and Sony are really preparing and have been from when they started rolling Spider-Man into the MCU. They're preparing for a merger. I don't think that anybody in their right mind would let that happen from a monopoly standpoint. But they're going to be very much sister companies, if not.
Sony's a really successful tech company too, so I don't see them unless they were to sell their movie division to Disney, which I
was going to say that's the only thing I could imagine if Sony Pictures splintered off and then Disney thought, okay, let's put that under the House on Mouse umbrella. Similarly to how kind of Fox was splintered as well. But no, you're right, and they've definitely been getting closer in terms of Sony being able to juice as much as they can out of Spider-Man and the Sinister Six and every character in Spider-Man that might have general familiarity with general audiences. Putting out all-time great pictures like Morbius. Madam Web will be obviously on my in my top 3 films of 2024 by the end.
Well, the level of Madam Web, though,
I electrify you with my Sith lightning through the internet.
But when you see interviews with the stars of Madam Web, they thought they were making a Marvel movie. I don't think they actually even understood that was a Sony movie.
Yeah, they need better teams if that was genuine. It's funny to read, but it's a disaster to think about in reality. And even Marvel itself now has lost a lot of its luster since the end of Phase 3, Phase 4 being unsteady, lots of other factors going in.
Well, they did have, for the first time this past week, a Marvel executive came forward in an interview, and he admitted for the first time what everybody suspected is that when Bob Chapek came in, he mandated more content.
Yeah.
And that's why they completely, lost track of quality because they had to keep meeting all these ridiculous deadlines. And I'm sure that leaked over into Lucasfilm as well with some of their output.
Undoubtedly,
it would make
there's
sense.
just, things are coming. Like we just said, the Acolyte trailer just came, and it's dropping in June. And I was like, holy crap! I wasn't expecting that to happen. I mean, we've gotten so much more, so much faster than we expected. We've gotten the Bad Batch, and it just came out. Let's go. And then immediately following the Bad Batch, we're going to have the Acolyte, and we're still anticipating potentially Skeleton Crew this year.
What was crazy also is that the Acolyte supposedly showed its trailer and exclusive footage 11 months ago at Celebration, and to only put the trailer out now 3 months ahead is pretty, like less than 3 months ahead actually, because it's starting June 4th. Like that's really surprising to wait that long.
Well, we could, because we talked about a little bit of we had Skip on the watch along on Thursday, and Skip and Spencer were both in London and saw that, and saw the exclusive stuff that they had, and they're like, oh yeah, we saw this and this and this that was there, but now you have this big kind of broader
deal. The latter half of the trailer was completely new, so we'd seen a sort of minute or so of the beginning, and then the trailer takes a little bit more in terms of showing you the characters, a little bit more story, although obviously holding cards close to the chest, you don't want to reveal too much, but I was surprised at how many new little shots there were towards the back end of the trailer compared to what was shown in London, but then presently surprised because there was something that I hadn't seen before. It was like, okay, it's dropped, that's great, let's check it out. Okay, this is the familiar stuff. Some of these, so the big takeaway I think a lot of people had, and I had, from seeing any footage of the Acolyte at Celebration, was the choreography. The fact that it looked like they had somebody who really knew how to just set the camera and let action take place and see that unfold in a more grounded martial arts type sense. Being able to see people kind of skid and slide across surfaces, push each other back and forth with the force, as well as their own, physicality. It seemed very tactile and very thought out, at least from an action point of view, which was very refreshing because you think of Star Wars origins and big inspirations being, Japanese cinema, samurai film. It makes sense to have some of these elements brought to the fore again, and wrapped up nicely, hopefully in a new story that people can get involved in.
Yeah, so I mean, I enjoyed the trailer, and I think you're right. It's lit beautifully. There's really nice camera movements, and it's lit, I think, intentionally very differently from scene to scene. You have very, very light scenes and bright scenes happening in with the Jedi, and then you have much, much darker scenes. And that's got to be intentional. The only thing that I think really took me out of it is not the pushing and the skidding and the using the force in the martial arts scenes. I think that's amazing. That was great. That's some of my favorite stuff that came out of Ahsoka, when Ezra is using the force in his fighting. I think that we need to see more of, but the martial arts is getting a little too Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Jackie Chan, 14,000 flips through the air. I'm nervous about that.
I saw the trailer and nothing about it grabbed me at all. Usually Lucasfilm makes really banger trailers. I watched this and I'm like, this looks almost like they shot it in Galaxy's Edge. Looks a bit cheap for some reason. And I was intrigued by the premise because I assumed that this idea of somebody hunting and killing Jedi is going to be the lead-in, because they said this series is supposed to be about like a Sith apprentice.
Yeah.
And the Sith master. But it's like, okay, they have a lot of color, a lot of characters, and they showed off so many characters, but nothing about it really was intriguing. It's like, I was like, okay. I was really hyped for this series because it's like, the dark side, the Acolyte, but then they spend almost exclusively the whole trailer focusing on the Jedi. So it's like, I'm like, does this mean that the Jedi are going to be the main characters and not the Sith, like you guys teased that this show is going to be about, which was the whole appeal that everybody got excited by? Even the poster, you got the red saber on it. It's like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
And then I watched it. It's like,
This art
okay,
looks
Carrie
great.
Moss is cool, but which is probably why they're putting in more of that Matrix stuff, because they brought her along in there. But it just didn't. It's like, okay, nothing. I don't know. It didn't, like, how in the previous trailers they find something that's going to be like a showstopper to show off certain images. They're just really going to get you going. Like, this one didn't really have that. It's like, okay. And
so yeah, it changed a lot of my perceptions of the show from what I had heard them talking about, because I watched the live stage incessantly from London, and I when these guys came out of the Acolyte trailer and they were out and they were all talking, it's very exciting, and it's supposed to be a very different thing. But you're right, there's confusion on who is going to be what and where. Is, I assume, the one with the heavy flippy martial arts is going to be the Acolyte. I assume that's it. It's a darker costumed person. It's fighting Trinity, for lack of a better, Carrie Ann Moss, and she's much lighter and in Jedi robes this time. Where I expected, based on and it's based on her characters that she's played before, is I expected her to potentially be go with the darker one. Is she going to be the older Acolyte, or is she going to be the Sith? But you're right. There was an awful lot of Jedi stuff, not a whole bunch. The only thing we really, I think we saw, that the one that's got to be the one that's going toward the dark is the little girl that said fire. I see fire when she's in the, the Jedi temple. I really want to know too now more. What is the O in the Acolyte? What is it a ring? What is that?
Hyperspace ring to oblivion.
And he could be now, because we've seen the hyperspace ring and the craziness of Ahsoka. I would hope that they don't tie this at all to anything. I really hope.
Were any of those characters from the trailer like High Republic people? I didn't watch the trailer.
Yes. It will be tied to the High Republic. That has been seen. That was seen with, we forgot even the Hasbro Pulse that happened this week. Pulse announcements, and these characters are already going announced as Black Series for pre-order. And some of these characters are from the High Republic. I think they're ones that happened, and I think maybe a Padawan that was in the High Republic that is now a master in the Acolyte series. I don't know the High Republic well enough to speak to that. If you guys want to see that, I know that sort of thing is going to be discussed in the future on the Jedi Archives, because those guys are all High Republic all the time over there. So check out our sister Sunday show. But yeah, I mean, there's got to be surprises and more stuff that we're going to see. I cannot imagine that we're not going to see Yoda at some point. Just based on timeline and where this takes place and how this takes place. The question will be, do they do that fan servicey? Do they do that well? I don't know.
Right.
What are other elements and things that you saw and thought about and liked or disliked?
I think it's similar to what both of you said. The premise and the idea of the Acolyte sounded fantastic and seemed to be, let's go from the other side. Let's have a dark side character, maybe go into the origins of the Sith. This is before, because I think it's coming up to now 3 years since they released this title and came up with the project and announced it. And we look at how we've enjoyed recent content in Visions Volume 2 especially, and you've had some really interesting young characters, all happen to be female characters if you think about it, in Volume 2 as the protagonists, and a lot of them going dark, skewing dark, or having some dark calling that they're answering. When we think of, some of the standout moments in Visions, Screech's Reach, a dark amulet leading a young female character to a Sith mother. You have all these ideas that have been swirling in people's heads for for such a long time, and then realized in a premium Disney Plus package. And then when it comes back to live action, you have something that does look a little cheap, a little like it's been less thought out and more rushed out. And it's what Catherine, you're saying about the admission from a producer talking about Bob Chapek trying to just churn out, let's keep spinning the wheel, let's keep pumping out more and more properties, let's keep eyes on, let's keep people logged into Disney Plus, let's retain but also try and engage more just with volume rather than quality. It's gonna always come down to some projects being really compromised. And I thought that the Book of Boba Fett was the maybe worst looking we'd see Star Wars on TV in terms of just visual quality. And then we had moments of the Obi-Wan show that really kind of looked like they were, I don't know, just off a side unit, or recorded in secret.
Fluorescent light from the Home Depot that's readily certain.
Yeah, just reflections of things. Move your car out the way.
The D team of writers for that series.
Yeah, so I was just going on a physical and visual standpoint in terms of feeling cheap. But then, there's the actual quality of writing or complete lack thereof you've seen now for a couple of Star Wars series. I think it was a lot better for Ahsoka. It wasn't stand out at all, but things massively improved. Generally, the writing in Ahsoka is a lot better than the worst of Disney Plus Star Wars we've seen. That's not the highest praise, but I'm still glad they gave us some imaginative moments in that show and brought back some characters together that we maybe long to see in live action. And you can say fan service if you want, or you can say it's setup that has been years in the making, and they are able to present us with something that is satisfying and that made sense for the most part in world. The problem with the Acolyte,
and don't just dismiss fan service as a bad thing. Is fan service can't be a horrible thing, and has been shown that way.
It's a very loaded term.
Right, done right, fan service, like some of the stuff that is in Ahsoka, is bringing us essentially like a new season of Star Wars Rebels in live action. That can be good. Like great fan service is rare, and I come out of this from just seeing, and I won't go into spoilers and details from the new Ghostbusters. There's fan service all freaking over that.
Mm-hmm.
And some of it done well, a lot of it done but fan service, I go back to Top Gun Maverick. Fan service every 5 seconds.
For sure.
That's how you do that.
It is.
Is Rise of Skywalker. Fan service.
That's fan disservice. What that is.
It's rough. And some fan disrespect.
That kind of thing. But I find it really funny how we're saying and looking at the visuals and stuff in this look cheap. And the question is, was it a good decision to do what they did? Because they've come out, I think this week or last week, recently, talking about in the Acolyte that they didn't use the volume at all. Zero volume. Is there? It's like, nope, we're going in actual locations and sets and was that the bad choice? Is the volume gotten to and we know when the volume when you can tell the volume is the volume, it's bad. But when you can't, it's added a lot.
Well, it also has to do with the budget. Like, how much money are they willing to invest on that technology? Because that's why sometimes you get the really shoddy version of it.
Yeah.
To why within 5 years it's starting to become a bad word among certain fans. It's like, no, there's plenty of projects that have used the volume that you probably don't even know.
Mhm.
Like, the Batman, like I said, that was the volume to extend the city into, for where they light up bat signal and you see the whole cityscape, all volume.
Yeah.
And it's like, look, and it could look really good. Or like The Mandalorian, the volume looked amazing on the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian. But then it's like you got to cut back your budgets and conserve them. And whereas Andor had the advantage of being made by a completely different production team. And it's crazy to think that in the 21st century, with how connected everybody is, telecommunications and all that, that they still managed to have a lot more autonomy over what they were doing over there in the UK than what people have control over here down in Manhattan Beach, where they film a lot of the studio work for Mandalorian, because Andor just was much higher quality across the board, and the visuals and everything were just so amazing. Which is probably why they've put a premium price on their 4K exclusive steelbook they're putting out for $64. Like, which is why I will wait for a flash sale. It's like, forget it. But I was browsing that the other day, and they even had Madame Web on there they wanted people to buy a 4K steelbook of that for $55 because the movie tanked so bad. I'm like, no, you're out of your mind.
No, but I think some of this is choices. Okay, great. We put budget into physical sets. Did we film it at way too high a quality? Because George, we love. That's where it came from. He had no budget whatsoever. It's just like, let's find recycled props and things from other shows. Let's find this. Let's find some junk. But let's just kind of soft focus that and move on. If they had done that same kind of nostalgic filming here, would we have liked that a little bit better? They're doing a lot of stuff in the Jedi Temple. They're doing it at really high focus, and that's been done before, but that was all done in the prequels, and that was done with CG because Lord knows they didn't do any physical whatever if they could avoid it in the prequels.
Oh yeah, Ewan McGregor told a funny story about that years ago. For some reason, it's making the rounds again, where he's being interviewed and he's talking about how when they filmed the final scene of Revenge of the Sith, and it was all on blue screen. I thought they filmed some of that in Tunisia during episode 2, unless they just got background plates there, because they mentioned that on the episode 2 bonus features that they're filming. Oh, we're going to film an episode 3 scene here. But the way Ewan tells the story is that it was all blue screen, and he expected to be given a real baby, and instead he's given like a plastic baby, and he's got to walk from this, he gets off the blue box that represents the OP that he rode in on. He keeps calling her Aunt Peru instead of Aunt Peru, and Aunt Owen and Uncle Peru at a certain point. And he gives the baby over, and he's walking back, and he's not sure which side of the blue box he's supposed to get back on because for getting on the animal. And George tells people, look at the moons, and they're looking around, and they don't know where they're supposed to look because there's nothing to look at. And I thought, okay, that's really funny, and I thought that would be a great band name, Uncle Peru and the Moons. But
Tatooine Rhapsody Part 2.
But it comes down to how much money they're going to put into these things, and maybe it'll benefit under the new region. Because there's also the story that ran last week that Patty Jenkins said she was writing the script for Rogue Squadron again.
That came out that the Rogue Squadron's back on.
She said she owed them a script, which might be true even if they don't go with it, but it's certainly not for the reasons she said. It's because they've known Wonder Woman 3 was done for several months, so it's not like, oh, we just found out that's not happening. It's like, no, you already knew that. So I don't know if Kennedy came to her senses and decided, okay, we need to bring Jenkins back on because that was a bad decision to, move past that. So hopefully that's what the case is, and they end up making it because it doesn't look like the Rey movie is going to happen now. I predicted that even after the big announcement at Celebration. I'm like, no, that's the first one to get canned, and it got canned. I
don't know yet.
It got canned. The writer-director said as much. He says, I got so many notes back on my script that I can't even my pitch anymore. He's like, I'm gonna go make the Peaky Blinders movie. You guys do what you want.
Well, yeah, I get that, but directors we've seen in Star Wars, directors are what comes and goes. Is that they'll do something with Daisy Ridley because she is not having a lot of success in anything else.
Yeah,
so
I know. It's just like,
they will do something with Daisy Ridley. Is they may do the thing where we just like pick up whoever is the flash in the pan director.
This ongoing problem that once again you do a big announcement, public announcement for the fans and all that, and you're not on the same page. You're on like entirely different planets from the people you have selected to do these projects. It's like, when are you gonna learn to stop making announcements until you are like ready? Like, do what Eon Production does. They don't announce something till the day before they start filming for their new Bond movies. It's like, I want to put in a vote of no confidence. We need new leadership.
At the very least, the people who are in charge of, we're going to make an announcement is like, yeah, no. Ooh, it's like, let's actually get something together, or like, hi.
No, I gotta say, even the
president, we have a writer's
room.
No
excuse for Rise of Skywalker.
This is my personal big picture pet peeve, is that like directors have way too much power on them. Is you are a director, you take a story and you tell it. You don't make up the whole shebang.
Yeah.
And but isn't that where we are? That's kind of where we are. It was like
it's interesting. I think if you look at, I think Top Gun Maverick should have put the blueprint for Star Wars with a Rogue Squadron property. How? Come on, what? It's right there
in the Rogue Squadron movie.
Yeah, exactly. She even went to an Air Force base and used real jets in a real airport like Top Gun Maverick to showcase what her Rogue Squadron movie was going to be. And maybe it was going to be really good until the powers that be at Lucasfilm were really stupid and said, oh, well, we can't go through this right now because you did Wonder Woman 84. It's like, I'm done with these people running this company.
or some of the deal was maybe they didn't have their person or whatever. Is, that was rumored at some point that was a vehicle for Gina Carano. Maybe we've got
that was going to be Rangers of the New Republic.
Oh, sorry, you're right. But that notwithstanding is, that was Rangers of the New Republic. But we've got the popularity of Carson Teva that just keeps building and building and building. Is that's a person that could be there. We've got I wouldn't say it's massive popularity in Ahsoka, but a lot of people are wanting to see more of Hera Syndulla. So we've got Mrs. Ewan McGregor in a place, and so we've got two characters here that easily you can throw into that.
That's true, because they didn't. Well, I assume that the Rogue Squadron movie would be like Empire era, right?
So we don't have any idea. Yes, we know there's Rogue Squadron by that point, but could we have the beginnings of Rogue Squadron? It doesn't necessarily have to be those people, because that would involve you recasting or deep faking or whatever actors that are way too old.
It doesn't have to be Luke or anything, but I wouldn't think it would be Hera or those people, because I think they would set it back in the timeline that fans love the best. Because I've heard that they've recently learned that lesson with Galaxy's Edge and started having other characters there, whether they match the timeline of Galaxy's Edge or not.
You've started to see instead of just the characters they created for Galaxy's Edge, Vi and whatever, is the Mandalorian is at Galaxy's Edge, and Hera is at Galaxy's Edge, and Rey. So those are not really overlapping timelines, at least not the age that Hera's being portrayed. Of course, we don't really know how long Twi'leks live, I don't think, but
yeah, it's only gave me finessed a bit, but yeah, I can imagine that's going to get more fan engagement if you've got more household names in the parks. It was interesting though, because there was also an article that came out about George Lucas endorsing Bob Iger. There's a huge proxy fight in their C-suite right now going on between one of the biggest investors, Nelson Peltz, versus Bob Iger. And I was quite surprised, but also reassured that George Lucas has come out to bat and defend Bob Iger, because some of the best decisions that the Walt Disney Company made in the modern era came under his stewardship. He got Marvel, he acquired Lucasfilm. He seemed to be somebody who had enough passion and forward-thinking strategy to not just look at high volume and low quality stuff that we'd seen with Bob Chapek. So that was interesting, actually, given how much we've heard about George Lucas be very upset and quite bitter about the way Star Wars looked in the aftermath of Disney acquiring them. To see that he was basically saying, like, creating screen magic's not for amateurs. It takes a lot of a lot of skill. So he has full faith and confidence in Bob Iger's Disney, and having the company brought him back to steady the ship a little. And I think a lot of the misfires with the MCU, as well as in Lucasfilm, would probably be a consequence of that Iger kind of up and down period, where you've got one person with kind of full confidence and full sort of pedigree to look at and like launch these projects, but only launch them when they're actually going to materialize, and not just to try and get comment fishing online or get the clicks or draw fans to social medias and see, oh look, that's an announcement of this big project, or that's a headline for a reason for people to attending a convention. The whole idea of making these announcements as big events is ridiculous now. It kind of is ridiculous if you think about it as a general thing. Unless something is officially confirmed, why would you start putting out the message there? What is the point?
And that would be the problem with social media in general, sir. Like,
Well,
is like, what
absolutely.
can we say today to get a whole bunch of clicks?
Yeah.
And I would say that the fact that Ike Perlmutter is backing Nelson Peltz is all the more reason to say to back Bob Iger, because we all know about Ike Perlmutter.
What has Disney done to just make Michael Eisner look like a choir boy? It's like, we long for Michael Eisner, as hated as he was at the time. It's like, wait, things were not so bad.
Yeah. Even Iger, who's as tone deaf as ever, has more business sense than Ike Perlmutter.
Yeah, it is a very large, in my opinion, this is mine, is responsibility to head the Disney Corporation is, yes, you have got to have the business sense, but it's freaking Disney. You cannot be the CEO hatchet man, the business only. You have got to have an association, a heart, and a love for these properties, because if you don't, those that do are going to eat you for breakfast. You just, they're not going to tolerate a random cold-blooded corporate shill at the head of Disney. It's no.
And yet that's kind of what we have. We haven't had a real storyteller championing Disney since Disney. And
Yeah.
I mean, granted, Michael Eisner did oversee the Disney Renaissance, and he's the one who had the foresight to say, we need to change what we're doing at Disney, because without Walt's leadership in the 70s and the 80s, it wasn't working. So he's like, Eisner's like, we need to change this. And the change worked because you got the Disney Renaissance. And then he's the one who decided to change the Disney parks and say, no, we got to bring in more stuff. Oh, George Lucas is here. Let's collaborate with him and make stuff and, do that kind of thing. Whereas Iger was really good at acquiring all those companies like Pixar, Marvel, Lucasfilm, and all the rest. But Iger's also the one who
given those in charge. Oh, we got all of these. Now we're in charge of them. Now let's make them do what we want to do instead of continuing to let them do the magic that made us want them.
Exactly, because
Yeah.
what was it, like barely a month after the Lucasfilm acquisition, they announced all the release dates for, oh, we're going to do this, and there's going to be a saga film every other year and a standalone movie every year. I'm like, Lucasfilm's a company which only does one blockbuster movie every 3 years, and you're trying to turn them like into Marvel Studios overnight. It's like, that's not going to happen. You need to take your time. They didn't do that, which is why the sequel trilogy turned out the way it did. And it took Solo failing for him to pump the brakes and realize, okay, we need to do what they think is right. And then the first real decision they let Kennedy make was like, okay, we're going to put Favreau and Filoni together, and they're going to go play in the Mandoverse. And that's why that worked. And that's why you never got the Jungle Book sequel that Disney was going to have Favreau do, because he was supposed to start that after the Lion King remake. But because he was given the keys to the Mandoverse, they went off and did that instead. Which, again, I think if Chapek had never taken over, it would have been a much smoother sailing with all the adjacent shows, even Kenobi and stuff, because, again, you could tell there was content being rushed. Like Book of Boba Fett was out within a year of the end of season 2 of Mandalorian, but then it took like another 3 years to bounce back to get Mandalorian season 3, which suffered a lot too. So you could see those effects kind of there. So maybe they'll be on. I mean, this admittedly, the Acolyte is a leftover of the Chapek era, and I know there were a lot of reshoots on it, and I'm not sure why they had there's always reshoots on stuff like this, but they apparently had pretty lengthy ones. I don't know if the script wasn't working or what, but we'll see. And Skeleton Crew presumably will be out in the fall, maybe. And Andor got pushed to next year because they want to make sure that they have good quality since the strikes took so long, which is good.
Right.
Because you want to have good quality.
You want to hear that.
We don't want them to rush Andor. You do Andor the way you do Andor.
Yeah.
And
but that's the thing. It's like I'm looking at that, and it's like even the pricing for these standalone physical media releases of these Star Wars shows are reflecting what the fans like. They put the Andor one at the extremely high cost, but the Kenobi one is a bit lower. And it's like, okay, so obviously it costs the same amount of money to put these out. So clearly you recognize what the fans are telling you. They're telling you they love Andor. They love this type of stuff. So I hope they get back to, going in that direction in terms of this is what the fans like out of Star Wars storytelling in terms of good writing, a lot of on-location shooting.
See, I think Andor is also saved in that they can't hedge their bets to change the outcome. The outcome of Andor is known. It happens.
Predetermined.
Everybody dies. We're done.
Yep.
But spoilers. But for other things, you're getting a little bit into it and you're seeing, oh, hey, maybe we can write the Kenobi show in a way that we can have Kenobi season 2. Maybe we can dress this up to where we can make this another one, and we can integrate with this property over here instead of let's just tell our story, get in, get out, be done, tell a good story, as opposed to all that other crap that people are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's
kind of weird to think also that the one biggest Disney Plus project that has a morbid predetermined outcome is the one that is the most successul in a storytelling point of view. Yeah. Because that's the one where everything's going to go on a
anti-Disney episode.
Yeah. But it's their best thing, and it gives us hope. How weird.
But think about this. Nobody thinks about this. Old school Walt Disney was pretty damn dark. I mean,
it was.
Bambi?
Oh, he didn't like...
But that's another thing that they don't understand. They said they're doing a live-action remake of Bambi, okay, because they're following line. But they want to change it because, we can't have the hunter kill Bambi's mom. I'm like, then why are you making Bambi? You're dumbing everything down. It's like they literally said the reason that they swapped out the abominable snowman in the Matterhorn with the new design with the animatronic, because they didn't want it to look as scary because we have to be nice to these creatures. And I'm like, it's an imaginary creature. It's the abominable snowman. What are you doing? This is not an animal rights thing. It's just a funny abominable snowman.
Right. It's insanity. And like Snow White's Scary Adventures for
great ride,
bazillion years was hugely popular. And then, no, we have to tell we can't make it so scary.
Yeah, they destroyed it, and it's continuing what I call the infantilization of society. Which is why if I were at Disney, I would get rid of all those people. It's like, no, I would change Snow White back to the way it was. Put Harold, like, why is Harold from the Matterhorn in the rafters at the Guardians ride? Like, what? Like, of all the, like, you could have set that up outside the Matterhorn as a photo op at the very least. Now let's just put it up in the rafters, showing how much disrespect we have for it. It's like, this thinking needs to, and let's spend $1 bajillion to retheme, Splash Mountain, which nobody's really been complaining about. It's like, okay, maybe we could have spent that money doing something with the extra space we have at Galaxy's Edge.
There are people that complain, but it's, it doesn't matter if it's a majority or a minority, or if it's like 2 people with a website. It doesn't matter. If somebody complains about something, that's
here's the thing.
The loud
people complaining about things. The only time I have ever seen internet Twitter complaints manifest itself as actual physical people holding signs outside the studio was when there was talk that the Warner Brothers was kicking Johnny Depp out of the Fantastic Beasts, but they weren't going to kick Amber Heard out of the Aquaman thing. And they said, well, since they're both filing lawsuits against each other for the same thing, then why are you only kicking him out and not her? And there were actual people putting up signs and standing outside. But that's literally the only time ever where people upset on social media actually manifest itself as real people. My point being, they need to stop putting so much investment in what the internet is saying all the time.
Yes, the internet can say anything, and does, because if you have these people complaining about this way, you have these other people complaining the completely opposite way. Like, for instance, listening to the internet.
Look at how bad the Pinocchio remake they just did for Disney Plus was. Arguably their worst live action remake.
Bothered to watch it.
And it's like, Pinocchio is a really dark story. It's supposed to be a dark story. That's kind of the point. And they Disney-fied the hell out of the remake with the Tom Hanks thing, which is why they quietly dump it on Disney Plus. But it's like, you're right. Some of Disney's earlier stuff was darker, and even then, it was considered sanitized compared to some of the source material of what they were adapting.
Absolutely,
but there were still great stories well told.
Little Mermaid source material.
That's a great story. There was a new Polish film about that 5 years ago, live action, set in the modern day, called The Lure. It was really good. But yeah, they did. That's another thing. It's like Disney has a whole wealth of stories in the public domain that they haven't adapted from Hans Christian Andersen or the Brothers Grimm, that they could get back to doing original content rather than all these live action remakes and all this obsession with franchise. Like, what was it? Universal paid $400 million for the rights to The Exorcist, and they did that to own every Exorcist related movie and property, and owning that name. And that first movie they put out last October was just hot garbage, because it's clear that they had no idea. Like, The Exorcist, like William Friedkin said, was a drama, and it had horror elements in it, and he was surprised that people interpret it more as a horror film than a drama. But it's like, that's the thing. That's what good stories well told are. But who spends $400 million? Like, there's so many exorcism movies out there. You don't need the Exorcist name on it, but they spent $400 million just so they can have the damn name. And it's like, I can't. That's why all these streaming services right now are charging money. They're trying to get people to jump off the ad-free version to get the commercial ones, because they spent all this money on original movies which don't bring in a dime, and wasted all, like Netflix spending $200 million on bad original movies. And it's like, look at where they had all that flux of cash, and rather than using it intelligently, they just.
I don't understand the levels of why and how Netflix has become a studio. Why like all the streaming services are going directly to like making their own content. Is we wanted and anticipated and were excited about it when they were just a repository for all the content that was already there, which they're not, because we're taking it all.
Part of what happened is that the studios chose to make their own streaming services.
What's that?
The studios chose to make their own streaming services, and then they weren't going to lease their stuff to Netflix as much anymore. And they figured, well, they were also so successful so quickly that they had so much extra money that it's like, well, let's try making shows that don't have to get stuck in the confines of a network television. And it worked for a while. A lot of their original series are still quite good. It's just their movies, which are bad. Their original movies. But that was the thing where they just spent an excessive amount of money on crap they don't need. And then and the laziness of the waterfall that followed, where every streaming service was called Plus.
Yeah.
It's like
ridiculous.
Disney Plus, MGM Plus, Paramount Plus. It's like, okay, stop.
Discovery Plus.
Exactly.
Why?
They didn't put they don't even put thought into how they're going to market the brand. And it's like, oh gosh. And then you had that incident last year when David Zaslav was going to kill Turner Classic Movies, and then he got a call from Scorsese, Spielberg, and Paul Thomas Anderson, and for fact that they told him that if you do this, we and all of our friends will never work for you again. Of course, they didn't say that in the media, but of course that's what they told him. And then they put out a little sanitized statement. Oh, he was never going to axe it. He was just going to change it. And it's like, bullshit. It's like that. We have to make server space to accommodate more bad reality TV from Discovery rather than preserving film history. And it's like, as many smart decisions as Zaslav has made to save Warner Brothers from all their bad financial decisions over the previous regime, it's like, again, you're prioritizing reality TV crap over, like, whose idea was it to put all the Discovery Plus stuff on the homepage with, oh, here's Maltese Falcon or Casablanca, and here's, the simple or whatever it is. And it's like, that should be its own little tab. Give away. Nope, shouldn't be on here. But no.
Keep it away from my eyes. Yeah.
I don't understand, and I cannot. I absolutely hate the organization of streaming services and where anything is. It's just like Disney Plus is potentially one of the better ones, where it's like, okay, there's the Star Wars tab, there's this, there's that. The Disney part probably is the worst organized part. The Disney part itself needs to be organized into better sections.
Chronology or eras or something. Yeah.
But Paramount has been accepting or tabling a lot of offers to sell the company. They got a $30 billion offer from one conglomerate. They got an $11 billion offer from another. It's like Paramount was one of the big 6 original studios, and look what happened to it in 10 years. And it's like these morons who are running these companies. It's like stop. It's like you have what, like movies made, like Godzilla -1 made for $10 million, makes over $100 million.
Oh yeah,
let's do that. Like Cord Jefferson said when he accepted his Oscar for adapted screenplay. It's like, you need to stop making one $200 million movie and make, like, say, 10 $20 million movies or less, or 20 $10 million movies.
So many things, and we've already discussed that this is going to be probably a whole future thing. But like the cast of Dune, why did you need to put that many hugely recognizable big actors in that film, when, if you've written it correctly, which we know it's been written forever, it's been done before, is why could we not have put new, cheaper actors and made it a lovely piece? You would have cut the budget by a third at least and made so much more room for profit.
Yeah, because it needed like 500 just to break even, and it just broke even last week.
Yeah, do we need Jason Momoa?
No. And I don't know if anybody took pay cuts for it, because I know the budget of the sequel was 190.
Yeah.
And
I think a massive amount of that has to be marketing and PR and stuff.
Well, 190 is just the production budget. That's not the production.
Yeah, but you're saying about the fact they needed 450 or 500 to get break even, which they just did.
Oh, right.
Because I as a counter that, I will say, I looked at the budgets of some of the highest grossing films recently, and when I saw that Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania had a bigger budget than Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2. that's a statement
about
the problem of big budget cinema.
I don't know, because you can fudge numbers and make numbers say anything you darn well please. But think about how much more it costs to fly Jason Momoa and Harrison Ford or whoever around the globe to promo this than Joe Smo, actor who's relatively unknown and happy to fly business class to just have the opportunity to go to London and say, look at my movie.
I just did the math, and with $190 million budget, $500 million with the theaters taking a third. That leaves them, after subtracting the production budget, $145 million minus whatever the marketing was. And usually they marketed the hell out of Dune Part 2. So it's probably close to $100 million. So they probably have $45 million profit so far out of 500, which isn't great because I think it's slowing down now a lot in terms of what it's, in terms of box office, because it's having more competition now. So, but that's all. Again, it's like they're spending obscene amounts of money, and it's like, okay, you shot in the desert for the most part, a few deserts, and some of that you could have done on the volume and made it look really good volume, but that's the thing. They you need to get budgets under control.
Completely.
And then speaking of good storytelling, we had the Oscars a couple weeks ago, where you had simple story, Godzilla -1, best visual effects. No, it wasn't the best visual effects. The creator was, but Godzilla was a more popular movie. But it was great because it was still a nice, simple script that's reminiscent of Star Wars. It's like they went with a classic type of hero's redemptive arc story, and it was great. It was one of the only Godzilla movies where Godzilla isn't really consequential to the plot. It's like you could have swapped him out with any type of disaster, and the hero's journey of redemption arc would have been the same. But that's why it works, because it's a good story, well told, a simple story with good characters, and a cast which didn't cost $1 bajillion.
Well, and it's a thing, and symptomatic of the Oscars here lately is everybody was just pitching a fit about the lack of number of nominations for Barbie, and that Barbie didn't win. It's not a popularity that is not what the Oscars are.
Right, and they don't get together in a giant room.
Barbie should have won the hell out of the People's Choice Awards.
Yeah, because it's the Academy voters don't get together in a big boardroom and decide, who are we going to screw over this? It's like, that's not how it works. They nominate based on what they've seen, and if it's great, and the idea that the host has to acknowledge it, these people didn't get nominated. It's like, dude, there's snubs every year. Get over it. It's like, yeah, Barbie was good. Was it great? No. It was funny. It was fun and funny, but I think that's about it.
Also, another thing about Oscars, or I mean, it's not an official thing, but it was funny. It was a comedy. Yes, it had a very important story behind the comedy, but how often do comedies really win at the Oscars?
Not since the 1930s.
Not really a thing. That's why I think Oppenheimer took a lot of them, because several of those nominated films were essentially comedies behind it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think you could say that about Poor Things and about The Holdovers. They're both being described more as, dramas with comedy, or if not comedy, dramas outright. So to have 3 of the 10 Best Picture noms to go to light-hearted films is surprising for the Oscars. But then on the other hand, it's good progress, because it shouldn't all be biopics and doom and gloom pictures that with human suffering, a very specific person, or a traumatized group of people ends up being the emotional journey you go on. And that's just, everyone's like, great storytelling, great character. Of course, there's no doubt there's going to be many films like that, but it's good to see films that have a more diverse feeling and a diverse set of, I guess, emotions they evoke from you that can be also held up to that high caliber. And I think probably comedy writing is the hardest to do well. So to have real human drama that's compelling, but still to either break that up with moments of levity, or to have genuine, what feels like organic, spontaneous interactions that are witty, that have callbacks, that use irony and sarcasm in just the right amount. That is probably the hardest thing to write
in real life. Getting that in real life is, I don't know why, it may be just the feeds that I get, but this has surfaced recently as people talking about an older interview with Bruce Willis talking about Die Hard. Don't even people say that I'm suggesting that Die Hard deserves an Academy Award. No, it's unrelated. Don't.
But it is one of the best pictures, though.
Yeah. But anyway, it's people were criticizing Bruce Willis's performance in that, and all of the kind of dark humor and the sarcastic comments and the things that this character was doing. And he's saying, and I believe this because I know a number of professional police officers. Oh, that's kind of how they are. That, is they're throwing off this life or death thing that they deal with every day with large amounts of, caffeine and sarcasm. So it's a reality kind of thing that people didn't want to see from him, because they wanted to see Schwarzenegger or Stallone, who's just like, oh, I am very serious that this is happening and blah, blah, blah. No. That's art imitating life there, because, and maybe it's art imitating life because life imitates art. Maybe the police are sarcastic at this point that they didn't used to be because of Lethal Weapon and cop shows or whatever. But the truth is that that's how it is. And having a picture, we've seen Oppenheimer wipe the floor with people, this is a film based on life.
Yeah, and it's just a movie that's people talking for 3 hours.
Yeah,
and it's like and it made $965 million, and billion now when you factor in home media. And granted, Christopher Nolan having his name on it has a lot to do with the attention being on it, but it was still a really good movie and made a ton of money. And that was just one of those rare. And there must have been a lot of pay cuts, because that movie had a stacked cast and it was only at $100 million budget.
Yeah.
So that guys like Robert Downey Jr. were not taking their typical, Marvel-sized paychecks for that movie, but it paid off, and it got the 7 Oscars I predicted that it was going to get. Poor Things got the Oscars that I thought it was going to get, because just from the looks and design. But you are seeing a lot more.
Even for the acting, were you not surprised?
That was the one that was a toss-up. I wasn't sure who was going to win Best Actress. I didn't like Anatomy of a Fall. I didn't think that was a good movie at all. I think that's a movie that people are getting overhyped about because.
Oh, really?
You have a female director, female screenwriter. I thought they made it way too obvious in the movie what the verdict was going to be and whether or not she was actually guilty, way too early. So when you hear people associated the movie keep going, "Ooh, did she do it?" And I'm like, you literally wrote this. You have to know this answer. It's it was so obvious to me watching this. And the problem is the whole movie is built on that tension is what's the verdict going to be and did she actually do it? And I felt that they gave that away so early without explicitly saying it that it was okay, now I'm just kind of watching this courtroom drama that's dragging out. And it's yeah. And it's the whole political aspect of it where you can tell the real reason the character's being put on trial is because she's a foreigner who is more successful than her husband in the same profession. And the French don't like her because she's an outsider and that kind of stuff. And so it's okay, it's it checks the box of the thing that Hollywood's really been into right now. Women empowerment, all that kind of stuff. Okay, check, tick, 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 tick. It's like Barbie ticks the boxes. It's it was fun, but you can't tell me with a straight face, many people have been trying to, that god-awful speech that America Ferrera's character gives is good. It's no. It's 2023, lady. It's not the 1950s. Come on.
Or it's like my first feminism speech, isn't it? Yeah. It's
Come on. I like the idea that movie was starting with, the idea that, it's they thought Barbie was revolutionary because it was the first doll that wasn't geared towards, motherhood type stuff. It was towards careers and having opportunities. And why Barbie thought it was going to be really, exciting to go visit the real world, and everybody's laughing in the theater because they know that she's going to be surprised when she sees that's not the case. And when the middle school student, who admittedly is the wrong character to be ranting in Barbie's face about it, but when she says, "Oh no, Barbie's bad because of blah blah blah," it's okay, so I can see what the movie's going to be. Then they're going to push this idea forward and come to a some type of an understanding, or something's going to happen there. And instead, she breaks down and cries and runs away, and the rest of the movie is just very rote, albeit very funny Ken stuff that. To me, it was more subplot material. I'm no, get back to this interesting original idea that you started with. And it's you abandoned the original conceit of what does Barbie mean overall? What is the legacy of Barbie to tell a very rote, very predictable, funny Ken story. And it's and then have that awful speech, which is, again, losing touch with what the movie was starting with. And it's like,
did the movie become what the movie was saying that it shouldn't have become when Ken took over the movie? Did it?
Yeah. And I guarantee that's the only reason that the America Ferrera, that she got the Oscar nomination for supporting actress, was for that speech. Because for some reason, that speech knocked a lot of people's socks off. And I was just like, I can't with this. But there you go. It's a reflection of what is Hollywood excited about right now. What are people getting cheered up about? And you see how that reflects in tons of nominations and like. Because there's been a lot of movies which have been made billions of dollars, which people got super excited about that don't get that many nominations.
Well, I mean, okay, so I didn't see a lot of these movies in there. Is where I see and it hits home for me is the best animated feature stuff. And the fact that I love Across the Spider-Verse. I love all the Spider-Verse movies. Did that really have a place in the Academy Awards? Elemental, really?
Well, I think Spider-Verse would, just on the grounds of the new animation, because some of that animation was groundbreakingly new stuff they were doing.
Yeah.
If they're respecting the animation, but the movie which a lot of people said should have won was that I don't even think it got nominated was Robot Dreams.
Robot Dreams was nominated.
It was nominated. Okay, so that's the movie that said that was really unique, really great idea. That was something new because it wasn't a franchise. It wasn't recycling something. It was really good, and they ended up going with the safe choice, which was Hayao Miyazaki for The Boy and the Heron, which admittedly was a well-received movie, but it's still within the wheelhouse of all of his movies which have gotten Oscars before.
Yes,
and it's
it was a very safe thing, I think my mind is there are too many. The big blockbuster over the top main studio things are being thrown in there just because they are popular. It's the same reason why Barbie was nominated for Best Picture. That is the only reason that Barbie should have been nominated for Best Picture.
Ever since
popularity, and that's not a category.
Ever since they expanded the Best Picture pool to 10, easily when I look at those 10, I can cross 5 off the list immediately.
Yeah.
Every year they've done that. It's been easy to do. And it's like, but they keep it's the same thing. Popularity contest, or we have to fill the slot. What are we going to pick? Oh, let's pick this. And the fact that they can't make up their minds whether they want the Oscars to be a ratings boom, which is influencing how they're, which movies they're nominating, or if they want it to be an actual award show. And that's the problem. They can't.
I think making it earlier and shortening the sucker, that's the ratings boom right there that you needed.
Well, they start an hour earlier, and it wasn't that much shorter. It was like maybe 10 minutes shorter, but I was surprised it managed to get finished that short, considering that they did all 5 songs.
Yeah.
Usually that would the length of the show. Instead, it was like, I still think the host introduction is way too long. It takes 25 minutes to get the first award out. It's like, come on, let's get this moving.
No. It is. You don't necessarily have to do a monologue, and you don't have to do a monologue that's criticizing everything that you're about to give awards to.
Yeah, I've never really understood that conceit. Like, you could do that at the Golden Globes because Golden Globes are a joke even now after they've disbanded the Hollywood Foreign Press Association and actually made it like real journalists. It's still a joke. But to do that at the Oscars is kind of odd. And how they continue to denigrate because the only reason the Oscars made the best animated film category is because they didn't like the idea that an animated movie, Beauty and the Beast, broke the glass ceiling and got nominated for Best Picture in 91. And so we'll create this as the consolation prize. But once they expanded the Best Picture pool to 10 movies, they did give up a nomination in 2009. I think Wall-E may have gotten one as well. But those were both exceptionally well-made films. But for the most part, every year they keep doing these stupid sketches where they're denigrating the animated movie category. Like, okay, here's your participation trophy, because they don't really respect that as a real thing, even though there's plenty of great manga stuff, which is very adult oriented. But of course, nobody in America sees that, which is why it doesn't get recognized or nominated, even though it probably should.
Corporate
America doesn't see that.
Beauty and the Beast was up against that year, but Beauty and the Beast, this is a damn good movie. I mean, that is
That would have been a fair win over given what the other 4 nominations were that year.
Of the Disney Renaissance. I mean, the Disney Renaissance, all of those were good, but Beauty and the Beast is arguably the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so rapid as well. You forget when I had to watch that after seeing the Disney live action one just to try and erase the live action one from my mind. The first thing I did after seeing that Emma Watson, Dan Stevens horror show. But you forget how actually concise and quick and snappy the storytelling is while still being very evocative.
See, that's what I want stories to be.
It has that magic feeling, as cliched as that sounds.
This is one of my problems with the latest Ghostbusters is Ghostbusters 84 was snappy. It was there. It's like Rodney Dangerfield would always say, or a lot of comedians, there was no fat on that joke. There's no fat on that movie. It's what you need to be. There was way too much stuff in the movie in Frozen Empire. There's way too much stuff that didn't need to be there.
Well, I think that's because they're trying to, because Afterlife was really bad because let's turn Ghostbusters into a drama. It's like, what? It's like, why is every shot of nostalgia treated like the Ark of the Covenant? Like Ghostbusters was never that, And now they had this problem where it's like, okay, the fans told us that they didn't like, these kids who aren't funny and have no chemistry being your new Ghostbusters. So let's bring back some of the old characters. But now we have the problem where we can't just completely shunt the new characters away. So we have to have this big ensemble. And for what it's worth, I think it's the second best Ghostbusters movie because the running joke of Ghostbusters 2 is that it's just a lazy remake because it was a one note. Because the thing that's so magical about the first Ghostbusters movie is that it's an hour 40-minute SNL skit that works. Like there's no character arcs, nobody learns anything. There's no major change. It's just fun, and like you said, it's zappy and it gets to the point each time. It's really good. And the second one was just okay. We're doing this again. The soft reboot was
the second one gives you your heartstrings. Is the whole first part of it is that the end the New York comes around and supports the city being the character that's what makes 2 work.
Yeah, and then the third one, the reboot, all the characters felt like caricatures and cartoon characters. It's like no. Like Ghostbusters has deadpan humor, not over the top, over the top goofy stuff. And then again, Afterlife, every shot of a nostalgic element in Afterlife was treated like the shot of Indy and Sala raising the Ark out of the tomb, as if it's this grandiose thing that we have to be so like you would be forgiven if you saw Afterlife as your first introduction to Ghostbusters. You're like, oh, I gotta see this original movie, and you watch it. It's like, huh? It's like it's not. It's like totally, it's so off, which is why I actually liked this one. Better than the last one, better than the last 2. Yeah, it's a little bit. I didn't find it too messy. I could follow it pretty simply, but
we'll discuss this when it's further removed and we're not spoilering so many people again. I'm sure that we'll come back to this, but or we'll get to this in the after show in a little bit. But but yeah, wrapping it back up. Acolyte trailer is I'm still excited. I still want to see the Acolyte. I'm not as excited as I was.
Yeah, and they're going to be the shorter 30-minute shows again, which means 5 minutes of that is going to be, end credits and the foreign language credits. And so there'll be a little short episodic live action. Did they say how many episodes it's going to be?
I
don't think so.
I haven't seen that. No. I was assuming that it would be like that 8 to 10 kind of the way they've done Ahsoka and that sort of thing. It's not going to be the 16 Bad Batch kind of thing.
Yeah.
Even though if they're doing the run times that short, it should be the Bad Batch kind of length.
Yeah, I think Bad Batch has really shown that you can have good storytelling in any medium, in a short form, but still have a worthwhile overall arc in a season to have 16 episodes.
This season especially, the other seasons there was fluff. But
there was.
This season,
quite a bit of that.
Season's pretty tight.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah,
there's promise.
Acolyte,
There's
sure
promise there still.
So much more content to this show. We'll have a whole lot to talk about. As that we get to that sooner, it's way sooner than we thought, really.
Things are accelerating along quite a clip now.
Yep. Alrighty. Well, so Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Until next time.
Thank you. May the force be with you.